Hey, all you cool cats and kittens. Just kidding. Hey, everyone. I think we're live. And what we're doing here today is planning our next Bead With Me project, the Bead Embroidery smartphone case. So this is my most recent iteration of a Bead Embroidery smartphone case. It's actually the only one I've ever made. And there is a pattern on my website, www.mgsdesigns.net, that you can purchase and download if you wish. You do not have to do this project. You should absolutely be able to do this project just from my videos, which will be over the next 4 weeks. This is the first of 4. Next Thursday will be when we actually start beading our case. The Thursday after that will be working on the bezel. So we should be done with bead embroidery by then. And then the 4th week should be a question and answer section. Hi, Lynn. If anyone else who's joined us wants to say hi, please feel free to say hi to me in the chat. And this is going to be sort of just an informal overview of the process of creating the smartphone case. And I'm going to kind of just go through the basic steps so that you have kind of an understanding of what the whole process is like. I also want to talk a little bit about design because I'm hoping with this project that you can sort of design your own case for your particular phone and using beads from your stash in any particular a pattern that you could come up with by yourself. So I'm going to give you some design tips and just talk about kind of what I do when I'm designing something like this. Hi Jill, hi Lisa, hi Christine, hi Kathleen. It's nice to see you all virtually. I can imagine you and picture your faces. This is great. Hi Sue, hi Susan. And I also just want to mention too, I know that I sent out a newsletter very late last night with some of these German glass components that I used in this original design, and they have pretty much all sold out now. I apologize for that. I did not anticipate such a great demand for them, so I actually just ordered some more of these German glass roses and some of the other cabochons as well, the mosaic cabochons and these swirl cabochons. I only had one of those guys listed. More people have joined us. Hi Linda, hi Virginia, hi Carrie, hi Jan. Jan's Folly, Jan S. Folly, so that's 2 Jans right in a row. Cool. Well, thanks for joining me, everyone. I'm gonna just jump into talking about this process so that you have an idea of what to expect. So I was hoping that this first session would help you sort of start formulating your ideas for your particular cell phone case. There's a couple things that you need to keep in mind when you're designing the case around your device. And so I just want to go over those so that you... Hi Melinda! You're able to chat this time. That's awesome. I just want to go over those so that you kind of can plan out your beading. And next Thursday is when I'll actually get into stitching the bead embroidery, which is the part with all the beads here. Hi baby! I'm doing a live class. Adelia just came out and wants to say hi. Do you want to say hi? I'm sorry, excuse me, just for a minute. I'll be right back. Yes, baby. I'll be right back. I just have to get up for a moment. Oh, you don't have any more. You want pear booty? What? You want pear booty or veggie sticks? Pear booty and veggie sticks. There we go. And nuts. I'm doing a live class right now. No. You don't even really like these, so I'm making something else too. You want to take part in this? Alright, I apologize for that. I forgot to brief my daughter, my 4-year-old Adelia, on leaving mommy alone for 1 hour while I do this class. So I apologize for the interruption. And let me think. Hi, Sharon. Hi, Michelle. Hi, Sandra. Sorry. Hi, other Michelle. Hi, Vanessa. Hi, Sandra. Thanks for joining me. I was just beginning to talk about planning out the case for your particular device. So I have my old phone in a case I just got on Amazon with a little dongle, and my phone is dying. I get these really cheap phones, so they don't last very long, and I have to buy new ones about once a year. So I just bought a refurbished Google Pixel phone on eBay, and I wanted to design a new case for it. So basically, to start the process, the first thing I'm going to do is look at the sides of my phone and all the places that have little buttons and areas that are going to need to not have beads covering them, so that I can sort of have an idea of where I'm going to have to leave space in my design. Hi, Judy from New Hampshire. Oh, hi, Amy. Hi, Dana. So with this phone, I've got a button here that turns on the phone. I've got my camera here. I've got a light sensor here that I don't want to cover up. And I'm assuming this is another part of the light sensor or something that has to do with the camera focusing. So I don't want to cover any of these things up. So I'm going to have to leave a hole in my bead embroidery there and here. Then when I look on the side, I have 2 buttons on this side, which I'm going to have to leave open when I do the bezel part of the case. Just to show you what the side of the case is going to sort of look like. This is my old one here. The bead embroidery is just the back of the piece, and then the sides end up being a bead woven peyote stitch bezel. When I turn to this side, I need to leave open this hole, this port for the charger, and this little hole that is, I'm assuming there's a microphone in there. I'm going to change this to autofocus so I can, this thing can focus automatically. Then the other side, I have a little area where I can remove my SD card. I'm actually not going to leave that open because I'm not going to frequently be needing to take my SD card out of my phone and back in. I can always take my phone out of the beaded case to do that. So I don't have to worry about that. Anything on this side, I can just completely bead this side. Then on the top, I just have one little space for the microphone here, and I'm going to just leave that open when I do the bezel. Now on the front, this is important too. I'm going to end up having a glass screen protector. It still hasn't come in the mail that I ordered, but I need to leave open these little strips here. I think these also have to do with the microphone, and then there's a little camera right here. I need to leave that spot open as well. So when doing that part of the project, that's going to end up being part of the peyote stitch bezel that comes up and around, and I just need to make sure that the part on the bottom doesn't come up past that strip right there, and that the part on the top, I design it in such a way that this strip of peyote stitch connecting the 2 halves of the bezel on either side, I have to make sure that that comes down below where the camera is and where this strip is. SIM card space. Susan, that's true that with the SIM card space I may need to have access, but I can always take my phone out of the case. This is a case that you can take the phone out. It's not permanently installed in here. So whether that's the SIM card access or the SD card access, I can't be sure until I open it up. I can leave that because I'm not going to frequently be taking the SD card in and out of my phone, or if it's the SIM card, same deal. So I'm going to not worry about leaving the space open for that. All right, so now I'm going to just kind of show you the different parts of the case. We've got the bead embroidery here. That's the first part we're going to work on next week. The back side is all going to be bead embroidery. And then before you do any of the other beading, you have to put a backing on the bead embroidery. This is some leather I got quite a few years ago, I think from Alexandra, if you guys are familiar with her. She sells some pretty cool leather. For this new case, I picked out some I have this leather that I got from Bijou Bead Store in Georgia that I haven't had a chance to use, and it's fabulous, so I'm finally going to have a chance to use that. This is a really great project to use up stuff in your stash that you've been waiting to use. Alright, so when I did the first bead embroidery phone case, I just traced my phone right on top of my stitching surface. You need to have a stitching surface like Peltex or lacy stiff stuff or stiff felt. Anything that you can bead through, you can use. I like to buy bolts of this heavyweight Pellon. It's called Peltex, the heavyweight version. It's just a sewing interfacing to add stiffness to different parts of garments. And I buy it in white, and then I dye it different colors with Rit Dye More, this new dye for synthetics, based on what I'm going to be using it for. For doing projects like this, sometimes it's good to use white. If you're going to plan on drawing your design on it, white is just easier to see. When I did my first bead phone case, I drew right onto the non-woven stitching base. I just traced out the outline of the phone right onto it. With this phone, I think I'm going to trace onto paper first so I can leave spots for all these little, the camera and the microphone and the button, all those things. So I have a scrap piece of paper, and to design the case, I'm going to work on the paper first, just so in case I make any mistakes, I don't have to redo it on a different piece of non-woven. I'm just tracing around the phone. This is going to give me a rough idea of the surface area that I'm going to need to cover with beads, but on my Peltex. And this next part, it's a little tricky. You're going to have to figure out, if you have things on the back of your phone like mine, you're going to have to sort of estimate where those are and draw them onto your template or your paper, whatever you're working on at the moment. So I can see my button is about here. I'm going to have to leave that space open. I'm going to just go for it and just kind of draw a circle here, and I can refine that later on. But I know that that area there is about where that button is. If you want to get really precise about it, you can actually take a ruler and measure from the edge of your device to the button, and then measure how wide the button is, and then do the same on your template. Measure from the edge to the location of the button and how wide it is. And you always want to leave a little extra space, because it's just better to leave too much space than not enough. And you want to account for your finger being able to actually get into the spot and be able to press the button if it's something like this. And so a little bit of extra width left around the button is going to be a good thing. So the next spot I need to leave open is this spot here where the camera and the sensors are. So I'm actually going to mark it on the edge, how much space I want to leave there on each edge. And then I'm going to sort of draw a little rectangle on the paper to account for that area. So just checking it. And I don't need to leave that whole space. I'm seeing that I can draw another little line here. And I can actually even leave a little bit of a strip up here, and the camera should still be able to take photos. So what I'm going to leave open is this space. These two spaces. That's what I need to leave open on the back of my bead embroidery. Now you can either incorporate these holes in your bead embroidery into the design somehow by stitching beads around them, sort of emphasizing them, or you can just leave them like sort of blank spaces where you have some sort of pattern radiating out from another part, and then just kind of have these holes sort of cut into it. The lazy way, if you have a printer copier, is copy the back. Yes, Beth, that's a good idea. You could definitely do that if you have a printer or copier or scanner. You could put your phone down onto it and scan it, and then have a picture of it on your computer. And if you have a printer connected to any of those things, you could print it out and sort of work from there. All right, so for the bead embroidery part, these are the only things I have to worry about. I don't have to worry about any of the buttons or the locations on the sides or the top or bottom that I'm not going to need to leave open, because those are going to be left open when I do the bezel part, which is done after the entire bead embroidery part is completed. So the next thing I'll do, this is a scrap piece of paper. You can't tell I've used it for several different things today, and it's actually one of my kids' drawings. But, you know, it's paper. It still works. We like to use everything we can as many times as we can in this house. So I'm going to cut this out. And I'm not doing the neatest job just because I'm trying to get this done quickly for you for the demonstration. But, you know, try to do as neat a job as you can when you're cutting. Do as I say, not as I do, right? If any of you are school teachers or parents and ever said that. Alright, so then what I can do is place this on top of my non-woven stitching base. I'm actually not going to end up using my white for the white color for my actual phone case, but it's the easiest to see for this demonstration, so I'm just using it for that. And Sharpie works good, markers work good. If you're going to use a marker, I suggest using one in a color that's similar to any of the beads you may have already picked out, or if you know that you're gonna if you're using a darker Peltex or laces, use a darker marker. Use something that's not going to show up too much unless it sort of matches your beads, and just trace the outline around the piece of paper that you've cut out. You do want to have a little bit of a couple millimeters of extra space on the outside of the where your phone's going to go down. So if you place your phone down, just test the size after you've traced it. You do want to have that little bit of extra space that you might have sticking out. And that'll become clear as we're working and getting closer to doing the peyote stitch bezel. But you need to have the little extra space. And if you look at my old cell phone case, you can kind of see there's a little extra space. You're going to need to be adding edge beads later on, and you're going to need to build a bezel right off of the edge of the bead embroidery, so that space is there to account for the size of the delicas or whatever beads you're going to need to do the bezel. Hi Julie, hi Beth, hi Vicky. Did I say hi to Vicky already? Hi Jeannie. P.S. This is Susan Melly. Hi Susan. If any of you have questions as I'm going along, please feel free to submit them in the chat and I will answer them. All right, so now I have to transfer my places that I need to leave open in the bead embroidery onto the Peltex. And one way to do this is sort of an old-fashioned way, but if you get a marker or a pen, you can sort of poke along the outline of the space you're going to need to use open. So that's one way to do that. Another way to do it would be to cut out the shape that you need to leave open and then trace around the cutout onto the non-woven. But I think I'm getting enough marks here that I can sort of estimate this circle. I can actually see my little indentations. I'm back to using a ballpoint pen here. You can kind of use whatever for this part. So that's the part I need to be careful and leave open when I'm doing my bead embroidery. And I might start by cutting a smaller hole and then sort of making it a little bit larger as I go, as I test it with my phone while I'm doing the bead embroidery. Alright, so then I need to make sure I leave this other part open here. So I'm going to do like sort of the four corners that I need to leave open and then dot in between. Again, you can just cut these out and then trace the cutouts, but I'm leaving enough of an impression when I do that to see where it is and then draw over those impressions and connect the dots. So I'm going to need to cut that out. I'm going to need to cut that out. Alright, so that's basically what you need to have done for next week as far as your actual physical setup, because next week I'll show you some bead embroidery techniques and talk about actually stitching the piece down. If you don't have any experience with bead embroidery, I'll be showing you back stitch, anchoring larger beads, things like that. And I'll have these cut out on my actual piece that I'm going to be using for my phone case next week, so I can be actually working on my piece while I show you those techniques. So the other thing I want to talk about is designing your smartphone case. So I know a lot of you purchased my pattern on my website, and that's great. You may have a hard time finding all those exact beads that I used because it was a lot of just random things that I had. There are these German glass navettes that I'm not sure who has those. Of course, these two components I did have on my website for sale. I also used a bunch of Swarovski pearls. We've got these rose peach pearls in here, and I forget what color this is, coral maybe. I've got Swarovski bicones in a couple different colors, and just a ton of different seed beads. So the way that I went about designing this piece is I started with the rose cabochon, and I glued it down. I decided that was what I wanted my focal to be. So I just started working outward from that focal and added the beads right around the outside edge, then worked outward. And I decided that I wanted sort of a geometric repeating pattern. I've always liked sort of like drawing Zentangle sort of things, those geometric patterns that radiate out from the center, or mandala sort of drawings. So I like to work with beads like that as well. And a couple things I want to mention for design if you are pulling together your own beads for this piece and using things from your stash are color. I want to talk about color, and I want to talk about my sort of rules for designing this sort of stuff. So with color, a lot of my pieces have basically two main colors. I like to use complementary colors. So on this piece, I thought of my two main colors as orange and teal. If you look at the beads, there's a lot of different variations of those two colors. I sort of get closer to olive green in some of these beads. There's also bronze, which is not really either one of those colors, but it complements both of those colors, orange and teal. And then I have little hints of purple in here. If I'm going to add a third sort of color family to a design, I try to keep it to a minimum and sort of spread it out through the design so that it's diffuse and it's there, but it doesn't compete with the other two main colors in the design. And I actually have my butterfly mask here too. I was going to talk about some of these principles using my butterfly mask as an example as well. So I'm not sure if it's better to show it in the FaceTime camera, the built-in camera. Probably better in the built-in camera. So with this piece, I did two main colors as well. It's sort of a pink-purple family and then teal family. And then I have the bronze beads in there again because they sort of complement both of those colors. But if you look at the piece, the overall two color families are blue-green, and purpley. It goes to pink too. So there's a lot of variation actually within those two color families, but I still think of this as having two main color families. So that's what I wanted to say about color. If anyone has any questions about the color thing, Linda has a question about the sides of the case. She wants me to show the sides of the case. Okay, I'm going to move my beads and address that question, and then I'll get back to the second point about design that I wanted to talk about, which was the patterns. Alright, so the sides of my case, Linda. In this case, when I did this one, I did not make any considerations for buttons or microphones or anything, charger plug even on this phone that I had that was at one time functional. I just decided that I wanted this case to put my phone in when I was not using it and just kind of store it. I actually had a beaded chain on here at one point that broke, but I thought, it'd be a place where you could put your phone and you could actually like wear it on a necklace or a strap or something, and then when you needed to use your phone, open up the flap and take it out to use it. So that was the idea behind this case. With the case that I'm going to be working on for my new phone, I am going to be considering all the little buttons and the charge port and microphones along the side. So what's going to happen is when I'm working the peyote stitch bezel up from the bead embroidery base, I'm going to have to leave those spots open. I'm going to have to not add beads there. So I may have several like little sections of peyote stitch and then a spot where I don't have any of the peyote stitch for the bezel, and then the next section where I'm working the peyote stitch bezel around. And I will have to then connect the peyote stitch strip in between these buttons, for example, to the peyote stitch over here. And I'll do that by stringing a row of delicas between those two spots and then working peyote stitch off them. And it'll end up being a continuous row of peyote stitch by the time I get to the top edge of the phone. So by the time I get to this point here, where I'm going to start needing to bring in the bezel to hold the outside, that edge of the phone in place, I'm going to have to bring it all together. So I hope by like talking about all this and stuff, you can start thinking about those considerations for when you're actually getting into designing the phone. But that, again, that part, the bezel and everything, that won't happen for 2 more weeks. That's going to be 2 Thursdays from now. You've got to have your bead embroidery completely finished and backed and everything before you start the bezel. All right, let's see. So I have a couple more questions I want to address. What would be the suggested use of light and dark beads to keep the piece from being too dark? My suggestion for light and dark is, I guess I sort of base it off something I learned in college. I did a program in art in college, and I learned a lot of stuff about design and thinking of your piece or the rectangle or whatever format you're using for your two-dimensional design as thinking of the shape, the composition of it overall. And you want to do the same thing when you're considering areas of light and dark on your piece. If you want your piece to be balanced, you can have areas that are lighter or brighter than others and areas that are darker. But you want to also have a mixture of light and dark areas throughout the piece. Like with this mask, I have an area that's pretty bright in the center, and that's okay because I consider this center sort of my focal point of the whole piece. Your eye kind of goes there first, and then it spreads, to the other parts of the piece. But I have, if you look at these other sections, I do have areas where there's some darker shapes, darker colors together, and then areas where there's lighter beads dispersed in between. And I like to have sort of sections where there are multiple beads of the same color. And if you have sections of your piece that have multiple beads of the same color, let me point out these areas right here above the eyes, that's going to be a section where your eye doesn't go to as much as the other areas because it's sort of boring. These are sort of rest areas for the eye. And I like to use them in areas where I don't want to draw attention. Like when doing this piece, I had to work from the center out on this side first and then on this side. And by the time I got down to this place right here, I knew it was going to be a little bit asymmetrical, even though I tried really, really hard to make everything perfectly symmetrical. It's really hard to do with beadwork. So I knew that in this place, in these 2 places right here, I didn't want the eye to be drawn there. I wanted the eye to be drawn elsewhere. You can make the attention go elsewhere by having a section that has all the same color and size of beads, all the same finish of beads. That's sort of, like I said, a rest area for the eyes. Same thing with the nose. I don't want the attention to be on the nose. Generally, we find the other parts of the face more attractive. People tend to emphasize their eyes, their cheekbones, things like that. And then, so in the mask, I wanted to draw attention away from the nose and toward the other places. So I used all the same color bead and same size and everything on the nose. For the areas where you want there to be more attention drawn, you're going to want to use different colors and shapes and finishes of beads. Where there's more fine detail, like in these areas here, that's where the eye is going to spend more time. So in any place in your design you want more of the focus to be, use more colors of beads, different variations, sizes, and shapes, and things like that. On the smaller format of the phone case, it's a little more difficult to have areas of rest and areas where there's more detail because it's such a small format, but I do have a couple areas where up here, for example, I used all the same color bead for a couple rows, and the eye isn't generally going to go there too much. It's sort of an area of rest from all the busyness of the rest of the piece. So I feel like I got off on a tangent sharing your original question was about areas of light and dark, but basically the short answer to that is I try to have areas of light and dark dispersed throughout, but I often will have some brighter beads around the focal or some higher contrast around the focal. Whether if the focal is light, I may have darker beads close to it. If the focal is dark, I might have lighter beads near it. I generally have beads that just stand out more around the focal area to draw attention. Okay, so I have a couple other questions I'll address. What will my new colors be? I was going to show you the beads that I pulled for my phone case, and I will show you those in a minute. I just want to see if I have any other questions. You're going to keep it where you can take it out, right? Yes, Susan, I'm definitely going to make the case have a flap at the top, my new phone case, have a flap at the top, or some sort of closure where I can get the phone out. I don't want it to be a permanent thing. Oh, the other thing I forgot to mention when you're considering your design is if you have a dongle or something on the back of your phone. I found that with my new case, or my old phone, this case, these dongles are so helpful. So I have to really think about before next week and decide whether or not I want to have one of these on my new phone case. And if I do, I'm either going to have to design this case so that there's a hole or like a buttonhole type thing where I can slip one of these in there and have it fastened to the back of my phone. They have these adhesive strips on there that are supposed to attach to phones or phone cases. I decide whether I want to leave a buttonhole type slot to put that in there because this fastens right to the phone, or whether I want to incorporate the bottom part of this dongle thing as sort of a bezel on my bead embroidery, so have it stuck to the Peltex and have a bezel of delica beads or something around it, or if you have a different style dongle, if you have, say, a magnetic holder. I looked these up because somebody had a question about these. They're sort of a little disc that fits on the back of the phone that is magnetic. You're going to need to leave a space for one of those, for sure, if you want to be able to continue to use that magnetic thing in your car to secure it to your dashboard or whatever you use it for. You just have to leave a hole for it and work the bead embroidery around it, unfortunately. You're not really going to be able to put beads or this surface on top of a magnetic holder and have it still be magnetic. It's just going to be, the beads and the Peltex are going to be too thick. All right, let's see some more, if there's some more questions, excuse me. What would be the suggested use of light and dark beads to keep the pieces from being too dark? Oh, sorry, I addressed that question already. You're going to keep where you take it out, yes. Many colors be, I will show you in a minute. Stella and Russ Jewelry, Linda. That's a long YouTube name, Linda. Okay. Some phones wireless charging might not work with these beads. That is a good point, Susan. If you have wireless charging, I am like so far behind the latest technology. I didn't even think about that. But that's definitely a consideration that you'll have to make your phone case easy for your phone to come out of it if you use a wireless charger frequently. So you have to leave enough space that you can just kind of zip the thing out, put it on the charger, and then once it's charged, put it back in. Will you keep your phone case on your phone to make the beaded case? So your phone case like a rugged what are they called, OtterBox or something like that, that you want to keep on your phone, you can definitely design the beaded phone case to go around that. You just have to make sure when you're tracing your template, you have your phone in that case so that you trace around that case as well, so that your beaded case will be able to accommodate that case. Again, leaving spots for all the buttons and the microphone area and the camera, all that. Still have to consider all those things. It'll just end up being a bigger beaded case. Eventually, will you talk about the durability of beads for a usable object? Well, Beth, unfortunately, beads are definitely not as durable as some of the plastic cases that are out there. So if you have a super expensive phone and you really need a durable case, this might not be the best thing to use in that case. Seed beads will definitely break. They're made of glass. If you drop it on a ceramic tile surface or concrete or something like that, they can definitely break. So this is definitely not a rugged sort of case. For me, it's just something that's fun, and I'm going to try it with my phone, and if I end up breaking some beads, well, it's happened before, and I won't cry over it, but I am going into it knowing that this is definitely not the most durable thing in the world. However, like as far as handling it, it is very durable. When you use a good beading thread and you're sewing these high quality seed beads down to a non-woven stitching base, as far as handling it, the beads aren't going to come off. The beads themselves are very secure. It's just that if they hit a hard surface, if you drop your phone, there is a chance some of these could break. You'd like to use a crossbody leather strap with the phone and attach it to rings or similar on the side. Yeah, Michelle, I definitely think you could do that. So what I did with this older case is I put these little loops of beads at the top. I secured them to the peyote stitch bezel, and then I actually had jump rings on them before. So you could attach jump rings of any size, or you could even, if you had like larger rings that are sometimes used for belts, or I'm not sure what else those larger metal rings I've seen are used for, but you could add those on with loops of beads if they don't have openings, like as you're adding the loop of beads on there. And I secured these really well with several passes of Fireline, so these are very durable and will not come off anytime soon either. Alright, so let's see more questions. The inside of your case looks beaded. This is, yeah, it's not beaded, it is patterned leather, Judy, on the inside of this case. Alexandra, I can never remember how to pronounce her last name. Alexandra from, I think she lives in New Jersey. She actually gave me this leather several years ago, I think at Bead and Button. She was very sweet. She gave me some of these pieces of leather that she had, and I was able to use this and incorporate it into this case. Okay, let's see, other questions. I was thinking of using finishes as such, carrying your phone in your pocket. Carry your phone in your pocket? Yeah, I'm not sure how the finishes would do on different seed beads in your pocket. There is a lot of variability, Beth, with the finishes on seed beads, especially now with the new Duracoat and permanent finish beads. Galvanized beads in general are going to, the finishes will wear off eventually with enough wear, even if they are Duracoat or permanent finish. Unfortunately, there's just no good way to keep galvanized coatings on glass beads forever. So with this piece, actually, I don't have too many galvanized beads on here. I have these old steel cut galvanized beads that you can see here. I think I got these from Laura McCabe or somebody. They were a gift from somebody, and I wanted to incorporate them. The finish is wearing off of those. I personally don't mind it because I feel like it just adds character. But the rest of the beads are not galvanized. There are metallic seed beads, which are a different process than the galvanized beads. Those are a little more stable. And then there's a lot of matte finish metallic beads. There's also lined beads and some sort of just opaque colored glass beads. Those are like the most durable finish out there. And Swarovski crystals you don't have to worry about, of course. Those are very, very durable and will last a very long time. Sidorenko. Okay. Thank you for sharing with me Alexandra's last name. I cannot pronounce it if I'm not reading it. Will the video will be available later after I'm done doing a live? Yes, Suzanne. This will be up in perpetuity on my YouTube page for anyone to watch later. What are antique 903 cuts? Those are the beads I was just talking about, Lynn. There are these guys here, and I believe they were a gift from Laura McCabe several years ago. She has a lot of cool antique stuff. It was just to have a project to use them. I had never used them before, and it was just to incorporate a gift from somebody. You don't have to use them. They're very close to contemporary size 11 seed beads, actually, especially Toho. If you use Toho brand seed beads, they're very close to a size 11 Toho seed bead. Okay. How about a case with a flap that you would leave on your phone all the time? Without a flap that you would leave on your phone all the time? Linda, I personally wouldn't want to do that, just because I feel like at some point I'm going to need to take my phone out of the case, whether it's to get repaired or to replace the screen protector that I'm going to have on it. Like I ordered some clear glass screen protectors, and when those break, I have to peel them off and put a new one on. But that's totally up to you. If you don't feel like you're going to need to access any of the parts of your phone, like the SD card area or anything, you can totally do that. I buy phones about once a year, so I'm going to need to get my SIM card and my SD card out later on this phone. So I definitely know I don't want to make a case that I'm going to have to rip open and like destroy to get my phone out. Even if I end up getting a different case, I don't want to destroy all that hard work that I did. Someone said something about using a clear case. Linda, yes, you could totally bead around your clear phone case. Just make sure you have allowances for the buttons on the case, you know, that are allowances for the actual buttons on the phone, things like that, the microphone. They always leave either little openings or little engineered parts that allow the sound to go through or the light to go through on these cases. So just account for those and leave space for those when you're doing your bead embroidery or your bezel. Okay, so I was going to share with you something else about the patterning. Oh yeah, okay, so when I'm doing bead embroidery in these sort of patterns, I like to sort of try to give myself rules about the design. And what I mean by that is that in order to not have the design look too random, in order to have it be cohesive and harmonic and have sort of a consistency throughout, I like to make rules about which beads go next to other beads. That's sort of how I make these designs. And it's not, I don't stick to the rules 100% on any given piece, but I like to make rules such as that, like with these antique 3-cut, these burgundy colored beads, I only wanted them next to bronze beads. So I'd have them next to bronze beads in this area here, and then again in this area here where I have these bronze bugle beads next to them, things like that. I'm trying to look for another area here where I've done that. So I have these little areas of the pattern where I have a little bicone. I think it's like an astral pink or a summer blush bicone. I have a little peach bead around it. I have a matte bronze bead around it, and then a matte olive bead around that. And I repeated that set of beads, those in that order, in different places in the design. I also repeated that up here and over here. And by having that in several different areas, it makes for a cohesive design. What are the other rules I did here? I'm not finding too many other rules in this pattern, but I definitely had some similar rules in the butterfly mask, where whenever I added one of these coin pearls, I made sure that I outlined it with these matte blue beads. In certain areas, I outlined them first with a larger size 8 gray translucent luster bead, but then after that I had the the matte blue beads around that so that there was a sort of consistency throughout the piece. Anytime I put down a coin bead, I made sure that those blue beads were going to be around it. And I used these smaller round pearls sort of in place of the coin beads in a line to graduate the size from the largest to smaller ones. So this is sort of a stand-in for a small coin pearl. They don't make them smaller than this size, but that's sort of to imitate the look of that. And down here you can see I did that same rule. I did the blue beads around the pearls. So that helps my design process if I come up with a couple rules first. Or I usually end up doing it after I stitch something down, I decide I don't like it, or rip it up. And ripping up can be an important part of this process as well, because you don't really know what the beads are going to look like until you stitch them in place. Sometimes you have to stitch something, rip up the beads, decide you didn't like that, try it in a different configuration and see if you like that. And then once you like that, sort of stick to that kind of patterning. Now when I actually designed this piece, I started in the center, as I said, and I actually drew on the non-woven stitching base just these shapes. These sort of arches. I like to use these arches a lot in bead embroidery because a lot of times we're starting with circular cabochon or stone of some kind and working around in a circle, and then it's easy to sort of put up repeating elements and then put arches around them, and that just kind of allows you to add beads in a radiating sort of way from the center, and it's sort of easy to create patterns when you do this by creating those little rules I was talking about. Alright, so you guys were asking about the beads that I'm going to use. I picked out a whole bunch of beads. I usually start with a huge selection of beads for the project that I'm going to be working on, and I end up having to narrow it down quite a bit as I'm working. Another design tip I have is that I try not to pick more than a couple, 2 to 3, 4 at the most, different colors of seed beads in each size. So I'll often use 15s, 11s, and 8s in my designs, but I try not to have too many different beads in each of those sizes. And by doing that, again, you're going to contribute to having a cohesive design. So I pick out a ton of beads first and then end up narrowing it down to my favorites as I go. So I actually picked out some size 10 delicas for my bezel on my phone case because I've been using these a lot. The peyote stitch using these goes a lot faster than using the size 11 delicas, but it's really just a little size difference, and to me I don't mind the slightly bigger size. So for it to go faster with a slightly bigger size, I'm in. I'm down for anything that goes quickly these days. Considering all the ripping out I foresee, weekly sessions might be too soon. I mean, that's true, Sharon. You don't have to have all your stuff done by the next week of the class, because this is going to be sort of an ongoing thing. I'm going to have the videos up on YouTube anytime, so you can kind of view them at your leisure. You know, you don't have to necessarily be at the same place that I am as I'm teaching it live. I just split it up that way because that was enough time, I thought, for myself to be finished with the first part and move on to the next part. So I'll show you some of the beads that I have picked out. I have some crystals, different colors of bicones. The two colors I'm trying to focus on using for this phone case are copper and very cool, like steel blue sorts of colors. And I did use some of these colors in the mask, so that might be why I'm sort of still in that mode. But I've got these these Moby duos. I never even used these, but this is a great time to pull out some of those weird shapes you might have and just give them a shot. This is just all random stuff from my stash I pulled just looking for this cool blue color in these different beads. There's no way I'm going to use all of these. I know for sure I want to use these. These are some of the same beads I used in the mask, and I do owe Lisa the colorway information for the beads I used in the mask, which I will put together and post on Facebook and on my website. I apologize, I did not have enough time to do that before the class. But this is one of those Toho semi-glazed beads, and I love it so much. It's like a pale steely blue, but it's got this little bit of a rainbow finish. I'm definitely using those. I know for sure those are going into the yes, for sure pile. I've got other colors sort of in that, other beads sort of in that color family. I've got 15s in that color family. I'm probably going to end up definitely using these two. These were also in my mask. They're matte metallic, sort of variegated. These are a Miyuki. I'll look up the color number for those because those are in the mask. I have these really cool Magatamas that are they're like an matte white opal sort of color, and they have this copper finish. I really want to use those because that sort of pulls my two main colors together. How many grams of size 10 Delica do you think you would need for the bezel? That's a good question. Probably more than one of these tubes is my guess. These tubes are 7.6 grams. I'd say 2 tubes is my estimate. And I guess we'll see if I'm right by the end. What else do I have? I have some Czech Rounds. These are sort of more purple than blue. I guess they're like tanzanite color. I might try to incorporate just a little bit of purple in my piece. So I have these purple seed beads. I have this really cool color that's sort of in between purple and copper. So I'm thinking that's probably going to be a winner as well. I have some size 8 seed beads. I think these are gold lined alabaster, but they sort of have a warm enough color that I think they could work in this design. It's almost copper colored if you look from afar. I have white opal crystals, a couple random super duos in there too I don't plan on using. I have these old Czech beads that are copper. I really like the finish. These aren't as durable as Japanese seed beads. The coating sometimes rubs off, but they're really pretty, so I might still use them. I have these beads I used in the mask as well, some of these copper sort of alabaster beads. I have some 2mm fire polish, 2mm pearls. I have some these random triangles. I think they're size 11 triangles. I don't even know where I got them. There's no label or anything, but they're clear, but with a little bit of a copper coating on one side. So I think that might work really nicely. And it's nice when you're doing these sorts of projects with bead embroidery that you can incorporate different shapes of beads, and that makes the design a little more interesting, just to use different shapes. I have these cool little melon beads that are blue. That might work well. Let's buy a Blanche tube of beads. Yeah, I've got beads from all over the place in this, because when I travel and teach, I just buy things. I've got some bugles. These are Czech bugles. Some pearls. These are more silvery sort of pearls, but I thought they could go with the cool blue colors. This is what I'm talking about, where I sort of stretch my colors one way or the other. It's still going to be sort of same color family, but I may end up using some things that are sort of silver too. I gotta go for an Alexandra class. Oh, have fun, Susan. See you later. See you next week. I've never used these. I bought these, I think, maybe from Becky Haley. I'm not sure. These are Czech O beads, and I thought those were really pretty. I could maybe incorporate those. And then I have a bunch of leftovers from doing my mask that I might try to use. This is listed on my website too, but I figure if nobody's gonna buy it, I'll take it down and I can pick out some of the pearls and crystals from this. What bead is used for the bezel? I must have missed it. So for the bezel of the phone case, to go around the phone, this piece I used a size 11 Delica. I'm gonna use a size 10 Delica on my new phone case. So just slightly larger, but I think it'll get the job done and it'll go a little quicker. So I'm gonna go for that. I also have one of those mosaic cabochons. I picked out one that I saved for myself. I'm gonna use this as my focal. So I'm gonna start with that on the phone case. And I was gonna talk about putting things off center too. I like to put the focal off center when I'm doing pieces that are not huge. I just think it's a little more interesting to have the focal off center than to have it right smack dab in the middle, especially because on the new case there's going to be cutouts and things. I want to draw attention away from those cutouts, and they're not symmetrical, so I don't think the design needs to be symmetrical. Probably going to end up doing a sort of similar placement for my focal on the new case, sort of down toward one of the corners. And grab my new phone. Where did I put it? This is the problem with having so many beads and losing things. Okay, here's my new phone. I'll probably put it somewhere down here, like I did with the other one, because there's going to be an open hole here, there's going to be an open hole here, and I want the attention to be drawn away from those parts. see if I have any more questions in the chat. On the phone klutz. Phone case will be a showpiece. There you go, Julie. I mean, it's just kind of something fun to do if you're not going to be actually using it. It could just be sort of more fun than functional and for show. Let's see, where do the 8s show up? So in this phone case, Michelle, I just used a few 8s that are sort of anchored with 15s in a couple spots. I like to use these anchored a lot of times just to add a little bit of texture because the 15s sit up a little higher from the surface than the other beads do. So I use them there. I have a couple of them sideways to fill in spaces near bicones and the other parts of the design and around the rows down here between 3mm bicones. Size 8 seed beads and 3mm bicones are just about the same size. So sometimes I like to make a line of beads using those so that there is sort of a patterning within the row of beads, but it's the same size so that when I go to do the next row around it, I don't have sort of indentations in the row because it's all sort of the same size. I have to take a sip of water. If you're going to do a radiating pattern, sort of a Zentangle or a mandala sort of pattern like I have with this phone case, you do want to start with the focal because you're going to be working outward from there with the beads. Now, speaking of focals, I know a lot of you purchased these rose cabochons from my website, and I know they sold out pretty quickly, and I apologize for that. I really didn't know how many people were going to want them. So I've just ordered some more from my supplier, who happens to be one state over from me, which means that they will arrive tomorrow, and I'm going to list them online today. So if anybody wants those rose cabochons and didn't get a chance, I'm going to list those, and then I have a few colors of these coming in as well. So I will list those on my website too. And if you want them, you can place your order. If you place your order today or tomorrow, I will have that all shipped out tomorrow. If you don't get them by next Thursday, it's not the end of the world, because next Thursday is just my first class to sort of introduce you to the bead embroidery and talk about what to do. You can sort of still be in the planning stages, and when you get your focal within the next week after that, then you can take the time to put it down and start working your beads around it. Something else you can do that's sometimes helpful is if you have your template all planned out, before you actually start beading on your template, if you want to set up some of those rules for the beads to make a cohesive pattern, just take a different piece of Peltex and start putting beads down and trying to make designs and see what you like. Put, one color of bead next to the other, put a few down in a row, put another row next to it. Start sort of building a design, sort of like sketching with beadwork. I don't consider this to be a waste of time because if you don't do it on a separate piece, you're probably going to end up doing it on your actual piece that you want to keep. I don't think I've done one bead embroidery project without ripping beads out and starting over. Sometimes it's several times, like 2 to 3 times, where I stitch down a bunch of rows. I get at least a square inch or 2 done and decide I don't like it, because it's really hard to tell what it's going to look like until you get all the beads in place. So that's something you can do if you don't end up getting your focals in time to start right next Thursday with the next session, is you can just sort of start sketching with your beads, your seed beads and your smaller beads on a piece, and wait for your focal to arrive, and then you'll have your pattern sort of established. Okay, so let me see if I have any other questions. I can answer them, and then I will head out and start listing those things on my website. Let's see. Start with focal. Just come in. What about the volume buttons on the side? Okay, so Luella, I did go into that quite a bit. So after I end the live stream, just go back and watch the video from the beginning, and I did talk quite a bit about what you're going to need to consider for the buttons and the volume and the charger and all that on the side. Does anyone else have any questions before I go? I'm just going to put my beads back in my box. I might do some bead sketching between now and next week, so you can see what I was talking about that. I'll just do it on a separate piece of non-woven stitching base, not the one I'm going to end up using, so that I can figure out what I want my patterns to be. Oh, and I just want to let you know too, I am working on another kit design for another Bead With Me session that has a kit that goes with it and directions that are printed and everything. I want to have enough lead time for that for our international friends to join in as well. So I'm gonna, whenever I'm done with it, I'm gonna make sure there's at least 6 weeks for it to be shipped and everything. I'm just having a really hard time with the design. I'll show you what I've got right now. It's not even close to the final piece, but just in the interest of killing a few minutes while I wait for any questions to come in. This is the piece. I ordered these humongous Vigor rectangles from Swarovski to be custom coated. It's this crazy article. Nobody has these. I'm the only one that I think has ever ordered these and had them custom coated. They're 50 millimeters on one side by 16 millimeters. So I ordered those. And then I ordered this lace that has these little components, these flower components that I hand dyed. I cut them all out. Every kit's going to have one of these in it and this focal bead. And I'm just having a really hard time figuring out what to do around this. I've ripped this out 3 times. What you see is as far as I've gotten that I actually like. This is also uses some of those German glass custom coated things. Like I have these little flowers in a couple different colors that I'm going to put on there somehow, but I'm just in a rut with this design, so I apologize that that's not ready yet. And I sort of was delaying that kit, and that's why we're doing this smartphone case project instead right now, because I just don't know what I'm doing with it. But I wanted to give you a little preview of that anyway. You're excited to do the next class? Oh, good, Jill. Thank you. That's motivating for me to try to not give up on that project and just work on it. I think what I need is I need a good, nice sunny day outside to be sitting outside with my beads and working. That's when I usually do my best designing. So it's been really rainy here. It's rainy today, and that may be why I'm having such a hard time. Count me in. You had me at Purple Haze. Oh, good. Yeah, I love Purple Haze. I figured those would be awesome. It's fun to order this stuff and not know what it looks like because you're the first person who's ordered it. So I'm really happy with how they came out. Almost finished the Wild Geranium necklace. Awesome, Emily. Oh, hi, Vina. I didn't get a chance to say hi to you before. All right, so I guess no one else has questions. That's awesome. If you do have questions between now and next week, please feel free to shoot me an email to grickowski@gmail.com. Or if you forget that or don't have it in your email already, you can always contact me through my website, mgsdesigns.net. There's a contact form on there, and I'll just email you back after you send the contact form. That's just to prevent spamming. I don't have my email address on my website because I'll just get robots emailing me all the time. Sending you our Florida sunshine. Thanks, Jill. It is supposed to be sunny over the weekend, so hopefully I'll get a chance to sit outside for a couple hours and flesh out that project for you all. All right, well, thank you very much for joining me for this Bead With Me session. This was part 1 of a 4-part series on creating your very own bead embroidery smartphone case. Join me next Thursday from 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern Time to learn about the bead embroidery part of this piece. And in the meantime, you can collect your beads, put together colors, start thinking about different patternings you might want to do, try to get your focals, get everything together so that for next week you're ready to start beading. So thank you everyone for watching, and I'll see you online. Bye.